Hallelujah. Welcome to my first episode of Uncle Tom Media. I'm your boy, Pastor Excite, exposing the fruitless deeds of darkness and having nothing to do with them. And I wanted to take a moment to launch my first episode, episode 1, coming at you live from Uncle Tom Media. And wanted to tell you guys why that I'm doing this channel. Well, first off, I'm doing it because truth is something that's missing from the black culture and from the black neighborhoods and from the black society. And people that are the so-called black leaders of today seem to be against the truth and what we have been and what we've stood for. So I want to take a minute to get on here and to talk about why Uncle Tom Media and the real Uncle Tom. And I got this book right here, Uncle Tom's Cabin, which you can find online at Amazon. You can find this book also on Kindle. I have 2 in my repertoire. I want my family to know the truth and I want my kids to know the truth. So I have 2 of these, and you can get this and read the truth for yourself to expose the lies of the mainstream media. And when other black people call you Uncle Tom, they're doing you a favor. They don't realize who Uncle Tom was and what he stood for. So I'm gonna take a couple minutes to get on here and just to talk about Uncle Tom and what he stood for. So the real story of Uncle Tom is a story written by a white woman by the name of Harriet Beecher Stowe. And she, from the life of the real Uncle Tom. Now, his name is Uncle Tom, but he has a real name. His real name is Josiah Henson. He was a slave, and he did some miraculous things and some powerful things. But now this name in the black neighborhood and the community has now been demonized, and they just don't know the truth. They don't understand who he was and what he did and what he stood for. They don't know the teaching behind the real story of Uncle Tom. I don't think men even know his real name, and they just know him as Uncle Tom. And I don't think that people know who he is and what he did, because people just don't know the truth. People are not looking for the truth. They don't know the truth. But the truth has to be exposed. And understand that this is what I'm here to do and why I'm launching just this channel called Uncle Tom Media, to expose the truth and to let people know what the truth is. And of course, being born again by the blood of the Lamb, that Christ shed his death, that Christ shed his blood for us. He was resurrected. And what he did for us on Calvary is another way that people can comprehend the truth. And without being born again and being under the Antichrist spirit, being in the flesh, being a child of Satan, you cannot receive the truth. You don't love the truth, and you don't have the truth, because you got to be born again by the Spirit of God. In John chapter 3, Jesus says, unless you be born again. So you got to be born again. And this is not baptism. This is not you entering back into your mother. None of those things. This is by the Spirit of God coming upon you and making you anew, giving you a new heart, a new mind, and a new spirit to be able to now respond to divine stimuli and what the truth is. So, and so things that have happened in America today, we find that the truth is being something that is being demonized, put down, not really talked about, and not really said. And that the truth is being something, if you're black and you are conservative and you voted for Donald Trump, you're somehow a Uncle Tom. You're a bootlicker. You're an Oreo. You're a coon, right? You're all these things that truly try to say that you're not black. Even Joe Biden tried to say, if you're not black, or if you don't vote for me, then you're not black. So even this stigma about being black is somehow for you to be a Democrat and a Democrat only. And if you're a free thinker, a black person, and you're a conservative, you somehow don't know or don't understand, or you somehow are not black. And anything could be far from being insulting or just, doesn't make any sense, because me voting has nothing to do with my skin color. I will always be black no matter what I vote, but I'm conservative. My family is conservative, and so we vote conservative, and we voted for Donald Trump because he's for the people. And this is what we find in history. So now today, being an Uncle Tom is something that's a sellout. But no, Uncle Tom was a powerful black man. He was a slave who bought his own freedom. And so I'm going to talk about this in this first segment and this first episode. I'm doing here today, so let's get into this. Who is the real Uncle Tom? Okay, who is the real Uncle Tom? One of the most controversial characters in American literature. And so today, I want to uncover the truth about Josiah Henson, aka Uncle Tom. He was a preacher, he was a Christian, he was a slave, he bought his own freedom. And so let's get into this. Hallelujah, Uncle Tom. Okay, so Josiah Henson was born a slave, and he was not submissive, and some men think that he was just because he was friends with white people and he got the right-hand fellowship of white people, as you can put it. But what they don't realize is that he fought against slavery. He was against slavery. So the real Uncle Tom, who was he? Well, he was not a sellout. He was not an Oreo. He was not a bootlicker. He wasn't a coon, or he wasn't some whitewashed black man. He was a father, and later on we'll get into that. But so what happened to Josiah Henson that really changed his life is that when he was a young boy, his father got whipped for protecting the rights of his mother from a white slave master on the plantation. And so his father got whipped 100 times for standing up for the mistreatment of his mother. And so this really changed Josiah Henson, aka Uncle Tom. This really changed his life and really began to motivate him and move him in a different course of action, and one that really began to change his life. So after his father was whipped 100 lashes, of course, the plantation owner sold his father and sent him away, and he never saw his father again. And so Josiah Henson, aka Uncle Tom, he lost his father at a young age. But this sparked something in him, and he wanted to fight for what was right. He wanted to fight for his freedom. And so his father was sold, like I said, into a different plantation, and he never saw him again. And this really changed his life. Josiah Henson really got changed after that. His father was gone, and that he had no more guidance of a man with authority and power and a leader and a protector and a provider to show him how to live and show him what to do. But shortly after that, Josiah's master died in an accident. Some say that he was a brutal drinker, and I guess one night after drinking and spending some time at a tavern, and on his way home, drunk, he fell off his horse into a stream where he could not get up. And so he drowned on the water that was in the stream. And because he couldn't lift himself up out of the creek, he died. And his estate was sold, and he was separated. Josiah Henson was separated from his mom and from his siblings. And he was put on an auction block and sold away from his mom and his siblings. And his mother begged the slave owner to, buy her too, that she would do anything, if he was to buy her and to take her with her son, Josiah Henson, aka Uncle Tom. And, but he didn't. So his mom's pleas just fell on deaf ears. And so he was carried away, and he never saw his folks again. He never saw his mom again. He never saw his brothers again. He never saw anybody again. And so he was carried away. So Josiah Henson, aka Uncle Tom, was sold away, and his mother never saw him. And he fell very ill, and he was probably going to die at this new plantation where he was sold into. And he recovered. And after recovering, something sparked in him, and this showed that he had great strength, great leadership skills, and that he wanted to live and he wanted to be free, and having this inner strength to want to live and press on. And that is the time of him that he recovered. And on this new plantation, which he was sold into by the Rileys, it was hard. It was difficult. He suffered many beatings. He had harsh treatment. And one notable beating that really changed Josiah Henson, aka Uncle Tom, was he was beat because he was learning how to read and write. And that really, really changed him, because what he realized is that knowledge is power, and as Booker T. Washington once said, that character is power and knowledge is power. And so that was one of the reasons why black people really struggled and had a hard time, is that because they could not read or write, and it was illegal for them to read or write. It was illegal for them to understand the law system. It was illegal for them to try to educate themselves. And this is how the white masters in the South, which at that time were Democrats, and so Democrats owned slaves, and they treated them harshly. And so this was very hard, being beat that much and being beat that bad. And but this beating changed him. This beating really changed him. And his master beat him, and they didn't think that he was going to recover, but he did cover, and he was able to recover. And Riley put him in the market, and he was in charge of selling vegetables and fruits to white folks. And he began to meet doctors, and he began to meet lawyers, and he began to meet these great white men of great stature and of importance. And he began to learn how to talk. He began to learn how to shake a man's hand and look a man in his eyes. And he learned how to read and write. And just by memorizing what they were saying and going over conversations, he began to develop a character that was like of the people of his time, which considered white folks of intelligence. And so here is Josiah Henson, aka Uncle Tom, learning how to speak, learning how to have a knowledgeable, educated conversation with people just by selling vegetables and fruit in the market where he lived. And so he met people that were highly esteemed, and this attracted Josiah Henson, that he wanted to do something different with his life and be different and do something different. And his talent didn't stop. He became a talented preacher, even though that he could not fully read, but he could memorize scripture from hearing the missionaries that came to the market and brought the fruit and brought the vegetables. And he was a great oratorial preacher. He had great eloquence, and his memory was just on par. It was just phenomenal and amazing. And this began to spark the interest of the missionaries. And so he became a Christian. He was baptized into the faith. He preached the gospel. He drew black people. He drew white people just by the way that he preached, and the power and the conviction of the message of the gospel that he preached began to convict the hearts of people and to prick their hearts. And as a Christian of the gospel message, notably were people, they began to recognize black folks and white folks, and they recognized Josiah Henson, aka Uncle Tom, a man that worked his way into the ministry just by the memorization of scripture. And he was a spiritual man. He was an eloquent man. He was gifted, and he had the speaking ability and the humor while sharing the gospel that captivated so many people. And this began to encourage people listening or that would hear him speak. And so he began to read and he began to study, and then they began to train him up. And at the tender age of 18, with so much integrity and so much character and trustworthiness, Riley put him as the overseer over the slaves who worked in the cotton field. And so this means that he replaced the white overseer, and as a black overseer, he had authority over the over the black slaves who were in the cotton field. And so he began to treat them right. He began to treat them fairly. He treated them with kindness. He treated them with gentleness. And because of that, they began to pick more cotton and to harvest more. And they began to reap even more harvest, because as they planted, they knew that they were planting, and they knew because they had someone over them who respected them, who was kind to them, and who loved them. And out of this, the plantation began to prosper just because of the kindness and the gentleness of a black overseer being put over other black slaves who were in the cotton field and picking the fruit and picking the vegetables. And when they were short on their cotton, he would get them more cotton so they wouldn't get whipped. And he would give them food and make sure that they had well full stomachs at night, a balanced meal. He gave them extra water. He just went above and beyond because he saw his people suffering. And so again, Josiah Henson, aka Uncle Tom, the Uncle Tom that people are calling conservatives that are black today, is not the Uncle Tom that they're thinking about, because this Uncle Tom was not a sellout. He did not, go against of his people. No, he treated his people fairly. He treated them with dignity. He treated them with kindness and treated them with respect. So Josiah Henson, aka Uncle Tom, in 2025, that's being told to black conservatives and calling them sellouts, is not the Josiah Henson of the history of the 1800s. It's a completely different version. But of course, if you're not studying and if you don't know this truth, you can be tricked into thinking that black people that are conservative are somehow sellouts, and we're not. We're just the opposite. We're trying to save the black people from the Democratic plantation. We're trying to save our black young boys and our young black girls from the Democratic plantation, which is still the same Democrats from the 1800s. They're the exact same. They're just wearing suits and ties, but they haven't changed their message. They haven't changed their ideologies, have not changed, nor have they switched at all. So they are exactly the same. And so Josiah Henson, aka Uncle Tom, he treated them fairly. He treated these slaves with respect and dignity and honor. And because he did that, another black man came in over them and he tried to work them harder. And this black man, of course, we don't know his name, but he's portrayed in the Uncle Tom cabin story as Sambo, but we don't know his real name. That's something that's not there. But he's portrayed as somebody coming in and he whipped Josiah Henson, aka Uncle Tom. So Sambo is the guy that's against the black people. He would whip Josiah Henson and try to whip him so hard and try to beat him to death because of his kindness and his treatment toward the black slaves. And so Sambo would take the cotton out of the slaves' bags at night so that they could be whipped in the morning for not picking the right amount. He would give them less food. He was the one that was against them, and he was the one that was the master's right-hand man, versus Josiah Henson, aka Uncle Tom. He was not the master's right-hand man. He was a person that protected the other slaves and wanted them to prosper and did not go against them. And so this man was definitely what we would call a sellout today. To his own people, right? He was the one kissing up to the white owner. He was the one that was the Oreo. He was the bootlicker. He was actually the one that was the coon, but it was never Josiah Henson, aka Uncle Tom. Okay, and so Josiah Henson, aka Uncle Tom, that many thought were a sellout, he was just the opposite. No, he was the black man that rose to the top and treated his people fairly. And the slaves under him, he treated with dignity, honor, and this allowed him, because they worked so hard and so diligently for Josiah Henson, because it was good treatment for them, their harvest was even more better. And the plantation grew, and these slaves were happier, they sang, they worked hard, they produced more work, and they even produced more children. And more cotton grew, more fruit grew, and more grain grew. It was like, because of this treatment of this godly man, Josiah Henson, aka Uncle Tom, the slaves worked harder. They worked more diligently, and they wanted to prosper, and they wanted to do well because of the treatment of Josiah Henson, aka Uncle Tom. Still, Josiah's master Riley, was a drinker, heavy drinker, and he would go out and drink and gamble a lot, and so much so that he would get lost and he could never get home, and so he would wake up and just throw up in the town, and then Josiah would have to go get him. And one evening while going out, Mr. Riley took Josiah with him, and they went to the taverns to go drinking and gambling. And Riley, the slave master, got into a little bit of a trouble. And in the midst of the crowd, Josiah Henson runs in and tries to break up this fight. And in doing so, he punches another white man. And while he punches this other white man, it made him mad and it made him upset that a few days later, when he saw Josiah Henson and his slaves were with him, he had his slaves hold Josiah Henson down, and he beat him. And he beat him so hard and so long that he broke both his shoulders. And because black people at that time didn't have medical treatment and couldn't see the doctor, Josiah Henson, aka Uncle Tom, suffered real badly to where he could not lift his shoulders above his head. His arms above his head. And so he had a rough time, he had a difficult time. But again, he was not a person that was a sellout. He was a person that was for his people. While he was healing, he did not give up. He kept fighting for what was right, and he kept fighting for the truth, and he kept fighting for his people. And so black people didn't have value back then, so he couldn't see the doctor, and they didn't have, they were not treated as people. And so a black man hitting a white man, as you know, was a crime. And like almost crimes back there are punishable by death if you hit a white man. But Josiah himself was spared, and the white guy that he struck, trying to protect his overseer, took him to court. But of course, back then, slaves were not allowed to go into the white judgment halls or courts or to portray their side of the story. So Mr. Riley and the other guy that he got into the fight with, because Mr. Riley was knocked out and couldn't see what had happened, he couldn't give a good explanation to, why this man had damaged his property, his slave, and, broke both his shoulders. And so the man went away scot-free. But Josiah did not let that beating, stop him and going on his path and fighting, because once he had a, good notice of what possibly could happen, there was no justice for Josiah, aka Uncle Tom. But once his white overseer had found out who did it, like I said, he took the man to court and wanted to get payment for his damages, but none were taken because Josiah could not tell his story. So in the year 1825, Josiah's master had lost everything. Mr. Riley, because of his drinking and his gambling, had gone into debt, and he could not pay for his mortgage and could not pay his bills. And so his property was auctioned off. And at this time, Josiah, aka Uncle Tom, was married to Charlotte, and he had 3 sons. And the master wanted to be kind to Josiah Henson, aka Uncle Tom. And so what he did was he came up with a plan to hide the slaves and to let them get away free and to send them to his brother in Kentucky. And Mr. Riley gave Josiah Henson, aka Uncle Tom, the charge to lead these people to Kentucky and to get away scot-free. But on their way to Kentucky, they passed through Ohio. And Ohio at that time was a free state. And while he's there, he meets some more freed black slaves who tells them, no, don't go to Kentucky. It's a slave state. Stay here. You're on free soil. You're a free man. No one's going to beat you here. No one's going to whip you here. No one's going to ask you for papers here. You're free. Just stay here. But Josiah Henson, aka Uncle Tom, in his kind spirit and his integrity, wanted to finish the job that his master, Mr. Riley, had told him to do. So he goes to Kentucky, and while there, he realizes that once he gets there, that the people that he had brought there, they are sold into slavery, and they're sent down south to Alabama, which in the deep South, slavery was horrendous. It was horrible the way that they treated the slaves in the South. And so, but again, Josiah realized something. Wow, I was on free ground and I didn't let these people go. And because that these people had got sold when they had got to Kentucky, this really changed Josiah a lot, because he realized, wow, I was on free soil and I was a free man. And I came and got these people now to where they're locked up, and now they are no longer free. So this really, really changed him. And so Josiah said to himself, the next time that he got a chance to be free, that he would stay free and he would not go back into slavery. So Josiah Henson, aka Uncle Tom, he regretted it, that what he had done, but he had learned a lesson that when you get free and you land on free soil, you stay free and you live on free soil. So while he was in Kentucky, he regretted what he had done, but he had befriended a white minister that had told him that he could have his freedom for $350. And so he went around preaching in the local churches there, raising funds for his freedom. And when he reached the $350 that was needed for his freedom, he went back to Kentucky thinking that he had had his freedom and he was going to go get his wife and his children. But come to find out that the white minister had tricked him. And because Josiah Henson couldn't read or write, the actual freedom for a slave back then was $900. So he had $350 and he needed $650 more. So he was short, because the price for freedom back then was $1,000, not $900. And so he had realized that he had been tricked because he couldn't read or write. And he had realized that this white pastor had lied to him and tricked him. And so his master in Maryland and the brother in Kentucky were now arguing over whose slave was Josiah Henson and who owned him and who had rights to him. And so this caused more confusion and more difficulty, because now the only way that this could be fair is that they would have to sell Josiah Henson and then split the proceeds so that it could be fair and so that they could both walk away and feel some type of meeting was met in the middle. And so, but after hearing that and realizing that the plantation where he was, there was a nephew that was going to take him to New Orleans. Now they said to get some new fruits and new vegetables, but something in Josiah Henson had told him that this is not what they're going to do, and they were going to free him. And interesting enough, while on this trip, the nephew, he contracts malaria, and Josiah Henson, aka Uncle Tom, being the nice person that he is, nurses the young boy back to health with taking care of him. And they walk back to Kentucky, and that's where they begin to get him back well and get him back on his feet. But by that time, that long walk back, Josiah Henson had made up his mind. I'm not going to be a slave anymore. And so that night, he packed his bags and he took him and his wife and his children, and they headed north. And they walked 600 miles and just about to give up. And they had reached, I think it's Lake Erie. Yeah, they reached Lake Erie. And he's just about to give up, and he's had enough, and he's tired of walking. And just as he gets to Lake Erie, he meets a British captain of a ship. And they let him get on the ship, him and his family and his children. And they get on the ship and they sail to Canada. And just as they begin to see the shoreline of Canada, the British sailor says, "You see those trees over there? Those trees are planted in free soil and in free land. Once you touch down on that, you're a free man. You are free and no longer a slave." And he said, "Promise me one thing." And he said, "What?" And he said that you'll do what's right, that you'll be right and do what's right. And so at the tender age of 41, Josiah became a free man. Josiah Henson became a free man, and he was no longer a slave. And he landed in Canada, and he began to build. He began to get back to what he had been called to do, which is to go help and to teach other black men and women on how to be free. So traveling 600 miles, avoiding slave trappers, and then while during the night, traveling, and during the day sleeping in the forest, he finally makes it there to this British ship. And he gets on the ship and he gets his freedom, and he gets there and he gets off the boat. And Josiah, aka Uncle Tom, he began to live a good life, and he began to do right, and he settled in Canada, and he became a pillar for black slaves and settled in nicely. And in 1841, he settled and found a settlement for black slaves trying to look for freedom in Ontario. And he built a church, he built a school, and other black slaves that were trying to get free and they did not have education and they could not read or write. They came to him, and he began to teach them on how to live, how to make a living. And on this new freed land, there was a sawmill and a risk mill. And this is how he taught black men how to work with their hands. And there was a school to where children, young black boys and young black girls, could read and to write. And Josiah, he began to train them up. And faithfully, through the gospel, through the scriptures, Jesus Christ began to work mightily in Josiah Henson, aka Uncle Tom. And at the core of the Don settlement was an institute called the British School for Learning, where many blacks that were escaping in the South and the harsh treatment and the mistreatment of the black slaves came to Canada because they had heard about Josiah Henson, aka Uncle Tom, who was helping other blacks read and write, how to work and how to be educated. And it was his integrity and his leadership and knowledge that Josiah had. And on the Don settlement in Ontario, he became a key figure and helping out on the Underground Railroad. Wow, we all know that this is a famous place for Harriet Tubman and what she did with the Underground Railroad. Josiah Henson, aka Uncle Tom, had a part in this also as well, helping slaves be free, guiding them and showing them the way to go back and forth, and him risking his own life going back and forth from Canada to America through the Underground Railroad and leading people back to slavery. So again, Uncle Tom is not a sellout. Josiah Henson, aka Uncle Tom, is not some bootlicker. He's not a coon. He's not an Oreo. He is a black man that risked his own life, that risked what he had, that risked everything that he had to do in order to help black people be free and to read and to write. And so this notion that conservative black people in America today are Uncle Toms, I take that on with great, yeah, call me an Uncle Tom, because I know the real story. I really know what happened. I know that Uncle Tom was a man of integrity. He was a man of truth. He was a man of dignity. He was a man of worth. He was not a sellout. He helped his black people. He showed them how to read and write. He showed black men how to work with their hands. He taught young black boys and young black girls how to be students and how to read and how to write and how to carry themselves. So he was not a sellout. He wasn't anything of the sort. And so people who call you this, they just don't know their own history. And so we have adopted a mainstream idea that has been echoing through the airways that you're a sellout and you're a Uncle Tom if somehow you are a conservative black man or a conservative black woman. And if you believe in being married, or you believe in Jesus Christ, or if you believe in voting for what's right, and you believe in voting for the Second Amendment, if you believe in voting for pro-life, if you believe in voting for school choice, if you don't agree with homosexuality, if you don't agree with being a transgender, somehow you're not black. Somehow you're not down, and you are a Uncle Tom. You're a sellout because you believe and you're conservative, and somehow white people have whitewashed us, and somehow white people have blinded our minds. No, that's not true at all. See, we know history. We know facts, and we know that black people have never been Democrat. From the time of 1865, we were never Democrats. We did not vote for Democrats. Like I said before, and I'll say it again, there was two parties before Abraham Lincoln introduced the Republican Party. You had the Democrats and you had the Whigs, and that was it. The whole reason why Abraham Lincoln made the made the Republican Party was so that black people could be free, okay? So us, we are conservative. We don't believe that biological boys should be in girls' sports, And we don't believe that men and women can change their gender. We believe that God makes no mistakes, that man and woman is what God has created from the beginning. And this is the image of God that God will only recognize. Any other image God will not recognize. So Josiah Henson, aka Uncle Tom, risked his own life going back and forth through the Underground Railroad to help other slaves and free other slaves and to be free. And it's estimated that he helped free 118 other black slaves to freedom. So y'all want to call me Uncle Tom? I'll take the label with a straight up pat on my back. I'll take the label with a pat on my back. And trying to free other black people. And that's what I'm trying to do. So if I free 1, if I free 11, if I free 18, if I free 118, and I'm getting people off the Democratic plantation, I'll be that Uncle Tom. I'll be that person that you call a sellout, or you call a bootlicker, or you call an Oreo, because I'm willing to risk my black people to know the truth, because only the truth can set them free. And so this is what we're up against, and this is what most people don't realize, is that Uncle Tom was a great man and he did great things. And it's funny that this has not been told, and this story has not been told accurately and truthfully. And so Josiah Henson is a true Uncle Tom. He believed in freedom. He believed in educating other black people. He believed in a black man knowing how to read, how to write, how to work, how to count money, how to work with his hands. He believed that black little boys and girls should be educated and could read and write. He believed that black moms should be the makers of the home and to make the house a home. Josiah Henson, aka Uncle Tom, which most people don't even know that this is his real name, don't even know that he was a pillar of a black man, a pillar of the community and in the history books, but we'll never know about him because the history that's being touted today is not the true history of black people. And because Josiah Henson, aka Uncle Tom, had resilience and he had integrity and he had fortitude of wanting to be free and fighting for the freedom of his other black people, he didn't let anything interrupt that. And because of the evil in man to try to detour him, he never gave up. He never gave up. He never gave up. And so in 1849, he came out with a book called The Life of Josiah Henson, formerly a slave and now an inhabitant of Canada. And you can find this book on Amazon. You can find it on Kindle. And you can have all the answers to the truth about who Josiah Henson really is. The person who they call Uncle Tom, and then give him this label of stigma that he's not black. No, he was black, a conservative black, and he was doing what's right, fighting for the people, fighting for them to be educated, and wanting black people to be free and not to kill their babies, and wanting black people to have school choice, wanting black people to go to school, get an education, and not go to jail. And he wanted black people not to commit crime, not to have babies out of wedlock, but to marry, to get married while they're young, and to have a strong family and to have a strong father in the home. This is what Josiah, aka Uncle Tom, fought for. And the racial slur Uncle Tom is just a knock on people trying to tell you that you're not really black, and that somehow we're sucking up to the white man, and that somehow we're doing opposite of what our color is. This is not the truth at all. Okay? Josiah, aka Uncle Tom, did what was right for his time, fighting for the truth and fighting for people that couldn't read nor write, and fighting that black fathers would stay in the home and to marry their women. So again, Uncle Tom, aka Josiah Henson, was a brilliant man, and he fought for what was right, and he fought for standing up for the truth and knowledge and the integrity of his people. And after writing this book got the attention of Harriet Beecher Stowe, which was a white woman, and she was a abolitionist at her time. And so she began to write this book called Uncle Tom's Cabin, which, you know, at the time was not his name. Josiah Henson never came up with the name Uncle Tom. She did. And it was about Uncle Tom's Cabin. It was about him and this other character called Sambo. which was the other black man at the plantation in Kentucky that was trying to whoop Josiah Henson to death and trying to come up against the other slaves that were on the plantation. And actually, he was the sellout. It was never Josiah Henson. He was never the sellout. He wanted his people to be free. But she began to, and so she wrote this book about him because of what he wrote. This really got her attention. And this really began to be something that she wanted to do. And this is where you get the story of Uncle Tom and her using this name, Uncle Tom, and this person called Sambo. And so Josiah Henson, didn't know this woman, and but she used him, and because she had read this book that he had wrote about all the hard slavery times that he had had in slavery and how difficult it was, and just how hard that it was for him growing up, and how he went hungry, and how he suffered, and how he was beat. And so Josiah Henson, aka Uncle Tom, was not a man that was a sellout. No, he helped the black slaves. He would give them more cotton. He would share his food. He would make sure that they did get beat. He was, he made sure that they had self-worth and how they had self-dignity for themselves. And so he was not that way. And so in 1852, Uncle Tom's Cabin comes out. And this book was a sensation. It was a hit, and it sold 300 copies in the first year, and really began to set light on the mistreatment and the harsh cruelties of the antebellum South and the Jim Crow and the treatment of the black slaves in the South, which most northern whites did not know and which did not understand. For the average northern white person that lived in the North, this book began to be something that they could read in their living room and to connect themselves to the mistreatment of the blacks in the South. And this really began to be the talk at the dinner table for most white families, and the talk over tea, because they had no idea that such people could do such things to such people. The lynchings, the cooking people over a fire, raping women, hanging men, just for, looking at someone wrong. And so this began to really begin to sit uneasy in the whites and the North. And so this began a spark. Something new was happening as people began to read these stories. And so Beecher took it upon herself, and, she wrote this story and she wrote this book. And it began to change what people thought about the treatment of slaves in the South. And some have even said that Abraham Lincoln, when he met Harriet Beecher in 1862, after reading this book, this really began to spark him into moving on how to free the slaves. And so when he met her, he said, "So you're the little woman that read this big book and now is starting this big great war." So people have been said that this book, Uncle Tom's Cabin, was the catalyst into Abraham Lincoln starting the Republican Party and starting to wanting to free the slaves that were in the South. And so this is just remarkable, and the understanding behind this is so great. And again, I just want to encourage black people to know that this is the truth about Josiah Henson. He was not a sellout. He was not an Oreo. He was not a bootlicker. He was not a coon. Nothing of the such could ever be further from the truth. And so I don't know where people get this from. And so Abraham Lincoln had a mission, and he wanted to free the slaves. And it said that this book is the book that sparked that, was Uncle Tom's Cabin. And so this book put Josiah Henson into the spotlight. And when people saw him, they began to say that this is the real Uncle Tom, and this is the man that was born into slavery and had risen to the top and had begun to change his life. And then, but of course, as this book was written, this book, it got different opinions. And I think at that time, white people who saw Josiah Henson, aka Uncle Tom, as a threat, they began to paint pictures of him being someone who sucked up to white people, being someone who was a coward, being someone who shined the white man's shoes, and someone who said no sir and yes sir, and boss we sick, and all this other things. And because most people at that time that were black could not read or write, I think these pictures spoke volumes into them. And so they began to think that somehow Josiah Henson, aka Uncle Tom, was a sellout, and that he was really not down for the black people. But again, this is not the truth at all. He was a biblical man. He was a minister. He was a abolitionist. He was a man of character, a man of integrity. He was married. He had children. He had been beat. He had escaped from slavery. He had walked 600 miles to Canada to be free with his wife and kids. And so this idea that he was some type of, kiss up to white people was just not true. And black people really began to, be split on this. But again, this is not true at all. The book paints a different story. And because Josiah Henson was rising to power and rising to a place to where he was gaining notoriety and gaining traction to be a figure of hope for the black community, men at that time that were evil and that were white, they began to try to repaint this picture of Josiah Henson and to put it down as him being nothing more than a con and somehow a trickery to the black people, and that this story was not true. But again, black people have got to read this for themselves. They really got to know the truth for themselves and read these stories and come to common sense and to realize that we have never been Democrats. We were always Republican from the time of 1865 when Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation of Proclamation. We were never Democrat. We have never been Democrat. Democrats were the party of slavery. They were the party of the Ku Klux Klan. They were the party of the Southern Manifesto. They were the party that rejected the 13th, 14th, and the 15th Amendment. Lyndon B. Johnson said that I'm going to have these ends voting Democrat for the next 200 years. And so all this stuff is just not true about us being Democrat and some great party switch and all this stuff. It's just not true. You can't find this stuff in history. Josiah Henson, aka Uncle Tom, was a man of integrity, great virtue, and standing up for what he believed, and that was for the mistreatment of slavery. But these pictures, they begin to show him as a coward, bowing down to the white master, and being a shoe shiner. And this is not true at all. Of course, he was a man of great integrity, a man who fought for what's right, a man who began to catch even the attention of the Queen of England, Victoria, at that time. And he met with her, and over there, being in England, he taught about slavery. He taught the people what was going on about slavery and what the issues were. And that's because that Josiah was a man of integrity, self-worth, and he was a man that fought for his people. But of course, people want to downplay that and want to break that down. But he was a wonderful man. And today, in 2025, so we have these pictures and these same stereotypes that are being brainwashed into the black community. But again, it's not the Josiah Henson from the 1800s. It's not him. He was an educated man. He wanted to teach black people how to read and write, and he wanted to have people to be free. And, Josiah had never stopped fighting for freedom. He never stopped teaching. He never stopped for the rights of black women and black men to read and write and educate themselves. And he was embraced. Josiah Henson was a man of great worth. He was embraced. He had great value. He lived to be 93 years old. And today you can go visit Canada. Today you can go to Ontario today and you can see his cabin. You can see where he grew up. You can see the school. You can see how he lived. You can read about how he lived. And it's just sad that so many African Americans have been tricked into thinking that calling someone an Uncle Tom is a racial slur. No, you call a conservative black man or woman an Uncle Tom, you're doing them a favor, because we know history. We know the truth. We know what really happened. And we are trying to spread light on the truth, because who the Son sets free is free indeed. If a leader tells lies, and all his servants are liars, and we want you to know the truth. It's me. I'm your boy, Pastor Excite, aka Uncle Tom Media, bringing you the truth, bringing you the things that you need to hear and listen to. I hope you enjoyed this segment. Please write a comment. Please write what you got out of it, because these are the things that we need to know. These are the things that we need to be talking about, the truth. So again, pick up the book. It's by Harriet Beecher Stowe, Uncle Tom's Cabin. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it on Kindle. You can find this in any bookstore, half-price books, Barnes and Nobles. You can find it anywhere. Know the truth, because only the truth will set you free. Hallelujah. Jesus loves you, and I love you. It's time to come to the truth. Jesus bless you.